Hello, everyone. Welcome to CEDIA Expo Virtual. We're here to continue the discussion around technology and design collaboration with why systems integrators should partner with design, construction, and medical professionals. I'm your session moderator, Doug Weinstein, editor and partner at Technology Designer Magazine. Today, we're exploring the concept of living in place and how technology integrators can partner with other trades to leverage this for their business and how to meet the consumer's need to live comfortably and thrive in their home spaces. So I'd like to welcome our panelists. Jonas, founder of Carnemark Design Plus Build, Monique Chabot, occupational therapist and professor at Thomas Jefferson University, and Chris Vives, chief operating officer at A.B.E. Networks. At the bottom of the screen, you'll see a chat function and a Q&A function. Please make sure to put any and all questions into the Q&A function. We'll do our best to answer those at the end of the session. Let's get started. Monique, can you explain what is the living in place philosophy and what are common medical considerations that need to be taken into account when designing a home?
Of course, the living in place philosophy considers all the people who live in a home now and in the future. So as a result, it plans for current and future needs across all ages and ability, which makes it a much more holistic approach to design and home modifications. And in some ways, it's actually an extension on the aging in place movement. I actually work primarily with older adults, so that's my caveat on the medical issues side, because they are my specialty areas. But with my clients come caregivers, family members, and friends that range all across from young great-grandchildren all the way up to middle-aged people and even other older adults. So I would say that the primary medical issues that I actually end up addressing are primarily like memory, safety, and judgment related issues and what I would call executive functioning in my field. I also look a lot at people's general strength, and it seems a lot of my clients have problems with their legs. And so we work a lot on fall prevention and general safety getting around their homes. And stairs usually end up being a problem, as you can imagine.
Right.
Recently,
Go ahead.
sorry. So recently, a lot of my clients also have a lot of pain, so a lot of hip, knee, lumbar pain, hand and shoulder pain that limits their functional independence. And even before COVID, I was seeing a lot of people coming with cardiopulmonary issues, so just getting really tired, just going about their daily life. A lot of low vision issues, balance problems, and then I see specific issues related to different conditions that are unique to each one. And I've been seeing a lot of people lately with multiple sclerosis, diabetes, dementia, and Parkinson's disease, just to name a few of the conditions I work with.
So following up, Monique, what are common technologies you recommend when working with individuals within their home?
Usually I look towards my design and system integrator colleagues to help me choose out the specific items because they're usually much more aware of what's on the market than I am. I'll just do a general Google or Amazon search saying I need something that does this and then see what kind of pops up. But lately, my clients have been very interested in some particular items. I've had a lot of requests lately for doorbell systems and home security systems that would let them see who's at their front door, partially from a safety perspective, but also from the perspective of, do I really have to get up and go answer the door right now? And then if there's a way that they could let the person in and without getting up, they have preferred that. There's been a lot of requests for ways of preventing accidents that happen in the kitchen, like shut-off units, fall prevention, and just even knowing how hot and cold the water might be in the sink. Automatic lights have been a huge favorite of a lot of my clients lately because most homes are not well lit, especially for older adults. And then if they don't have to worry about it coming on and off, it does it on their own. That's a really big plus for them. Lots and lots of fall prevention, fall alerts and sensors, and just ways to actually even set up the environment and have supports in place that would limit their need to get up so that they're not at risk of falling because they're still sitting down. A lot of people interested in communication systems, telephone systems, being able to reach out to family and friends. And then I see a lot around mobility related devices for stairs and being able to get up and down out of bed, off of couches, off of toilets. And then toileting hygiene's also been a really common issue lately, and looking for ways to help deal with cleaning up and staying safe in the bathroom.
All right, Chris, what do integrators need to know about integrating medical equipment and gear? What can technology professionals suggest to the medical professionals?
So, as far as medical equipment, it would be, the connectivity methodology. How is it connected and how does it communicate? Is it something that works two-way? Does it report and provide logs? Can you monitor it? And also, can it take commands from an automation system? So, something that can be incorporated into the broader automation or technology systems to kind of unify your notifications, where it might be something that, might report locally, but, with the right forethought, we can make it report, with all of the other notifications and kind of bring that all together so you get seamless communication from all of your devices. As far as the technology that we can provide, technology can aid in safety and comfort, right? And so the doorbell, for example, is a great one. Voice assistants are a big thing where you can set these up to communicate, where before you might call out to the other room for a family member or a caretaker. Now you can call out to the assistant and reach that family member or caretaker, whether they're in the other room or another state. And you can, sort of have that seamless communication. Wearables are another one where, you can have reporting on vitals, so you can be logged into the same account and get those notifications in real time. Fall detection, where they can be set up such that if they detect a fall, they can call out without any further action. So it's an automatic thing that allows them to call out. And then again, the broader automation systems, lighting control is a big one, using sensors. So there's a variety of sensors that can be incorporated, where you may have an occupancy or a motion sensor that when you move into a space, it turns on the lights for you. So you don't even have to say, turn on the good morning scene or whatever it might be to activate these various systems. You walk in, it's an occupancy sensor, but even beyond that, you can have it where that occupancy sensor can report the lack of motion. So if you have, somebody in that space and they typically have their routine, and you find that a certain period of time goes by and they have not moved into the space that they typically would, you could assume that, something may be wrong, and proactively reach out. They leave the master bedroom to enter the bathroom, and a period of time goes by and they haven't returned, you can know and get some foresight there. So
Good. Following up on that with Jonas, as a designer, can you speak to how these technologies can be easily integrated into any room decor? And how can you ensure the aesthetics of the house are not compromised?
Well, making things beautiful and practical has sort of always been my goal. And it's interesting how much technology has become usable. One of the difficulties early on was that it was difficult to use these different technologies, but I think that it's really become so much easier, the sort of interface. Sonos is a good example of just being able to get music, and Lutron has some, just as Chris mentioned, there's different systems that are easier to use. So I focus on that first, and then also the manufacturers have really stepped up with different types of products that are beautiful. The barrier-free shower is actually a very good-looking shower. There's lots of grab bars that are super sturdy, but they look like beautiful jewelry, and you can hang them vertically, so it gives you visual orientation. Also, the flooring companies have come up with really nice, softer floors that help in fall prevention and that type of thing. Cabinetry has adjustable heights. So we tend to think of, as Monique said earlier, that sort of living in place philosophy, and also the aging in place, but maybe taking it even a step further back in terms of universal design, so that you're just making the house better. So that it's, I think it's going to happen more and more, just like energy efficiency. People are going to be thinking about, how do I live in this house for generations, my family over time? So I'm excited about everything that's happening with it.
Good. Now, we've all discussed what a perfect partnership would look like if a design build community and the systems integrator and the medical professionals came together to form localized teams. What I'd like to hear from all of you is, what is that perfect partnership, and how do we create those living in place design teams? Monique, why don't we start with you?
I would say for me, as the healthcare practitioner here, it would be to be involved in the design process and solution identification from day one. Because as an occupational therapist, I'm trained to really assess a person's abilities and the overall environment and see how that's impacting their daily life and their daily function, and to help them become independent. So there's questions that I ask, observations that I'll make, and links to functional abilities that I'm especially trained to do. That's within my scope of practice to help support daily activities. And I, quite frankly, I often find that people will give me very pertinent information that the team needs to know that they won't tell anyone else. They'll tell me because I'm the healthcare practitioner. So a lot of times I'm getting some insider information that you might not get otherwise, just by nature of who I am, what they believe I should or shouldn't hear, and the things that I ask and the observations that I make the second I walk into the home. I'm watching everything. So to be involved at the very, very start, I feel it really helps us to be proactive in our approaches and even more comprehensive in our solutions, while really meeting the need of the client to be safe and healthy in their home.
Perfect. Chris, anything to add to that on putting together living in place design teams?
Yeah, so I'll echo Monique and say that being brought in at the inception is the key, and steady communication throughout. Being involved with the technology side and the design can allow us to seamlessly integrate it into the decor, into the client's needs, and even make things not only look beautiful but sometimes disappear altogether. If the forethought is there and we can collaborate in the beginning, we can provide the functionality that the client needs and make it beautiful, and without sacrificing any of the benefits that technology has to offer. So yeah, I think the being brought in at inception, that's it.
Jonas, would you like to weigh in on this?
Well, it's hard to disagree. I was going to say, if we could start early and bring them in at the beginning of the process, that helps. For me as a designer, it helps me think about what we need to integrate, and bringing in someone like Chris's team so that they can do structural wiring when the walls are open. That's really important, blocking and things like that. Are we going to use a certain type of toilet that needs an electrical plug, making sure that that's there. So just really looking at it even before we get into schematic design and the design development of all the finishes, just knowing what those parameters are, it would be wonderful.
Perfect. So following up again, Jonas, how do designers find systems integrators who are specializing in living in place?
Well, probably I would say that, first of all, check the Living in Place Institute, and you can see who is in your area that might have that designation. I would also talk to maybe the existing providers that you have and see if they're interested in learning, because I think it's a great opportunity. And there are other fields and other designations and certifications that offer similar types of certifications, and maybe find someone who has some of that, and maybe they're very interested in getting certified as a living in place specialist. So I think really helping educate and bring in people, and also just that networking of figuring out, is there anybody already that's doing this stuff? Who is doing it?
All right. So following up with Chris, same question, only to your specialty. How can systems integrators find designers and occupational therapists?
So the first way is organically. If you're on a project and you've been brought in by the general contractor or the client, and there's a designer there or an occupational therapist there, you tailor your work to meet their needs too. So when you go in to do your design and you're specifying your television, maybe it's a frame television. It looks like a piece of art, right? Or any of these things, so that you endear yourself to them and you collaborate and you can develop a relationship. And that goes a long way into the next time that it comes around, them being more eager to work with you, or even refer you to say, hey, these guys really get it. They get what we need to do to, make it beautiful or to make it functional for the client. And, as far as occupational therapists, it's again, it's sort of a paying attention to the client's needs and understanding that they're likely going to have someone already that they're working with, and so say, hey, I'd really like to talk to the person that you're working with, your therapist, and say, what can we do? So proactively approach that part of it, because if we see a multi-generational dwelling or one with unique abilities, we'll take that into consideration before we start designing the technology, so we can say, okay, there's obviously a need here. If we're not prompted for it we're going to go and proactively seek out to be able to, meet those needs and make it that multi-generational home two separate considerations, sort of, where, the technology for the younger family is what it is, the modern, what it is today, and then the other may be, tailored to them. So yeah, that's the way that we go about it.
Good. Jonas, in your opinion, how do we start creating these living in place teams? And maybe more importantly, how do we market ourselves?
Well, I think, as some of, like Chris said, some of that's going to happen organically, and you're going to find people that you really like working with and that are like-minded, and thinking about the client and their needs and the sort of future outcome, I think is really helpful. And if you find a team of people that have that same belief system, then I think that's really important, because then there's this unspoken dialogue of, we all know what the goal is here. Let's work together to get that. I do think that then also thinking about how do you make the home better for the future. And there's lots of people that can get behind that type of, thinking that, here's a home that's going to be, really well taken care of, and then also very easily used by grandkids and grandparents for like a generation. So looking for that networking to develop people that you really click with, I think.
Perfect. Monique, do we need to discuss standards and best practices? What role should the medical professional take as far as making best practice recommendations?
I think it's important to note that there's some of us in my field that are specially trained in environments. All occupational therapists have a baseline generalist knowledge, and they can do the needed assessments and make recommendations. It's part of our scope of practice. But then there's a subset of us that have actually taken our studies much further and can be part of really advanced modification teams because of our advanced certifications, et cetera. But any occupational therapist can do the basic stuff. But really, because we understand human anatomy so well and the pathology of all these conditions and just how symptoms and even medication side effects all relate into daily independence and functioning, we really need to be involved on any project where it's suspected that someone coming into the home has a medical condition. And in my past collaborations with designers and system integrators, we kind of noted that we all saw the problem very similarly, and we were all approaching it the same way, but there was this extra layer or perspective that we each brought that was unique to our professions and training that just really made a difference in making the environment safer and more supportive and healthier. So I would just say, I guess in a nutshell, that best practice would be to bring on the healthcare practitioner whenever you even so much as suspect that a medical condition or concern could be potentially a player with this particular client.
Perfect. We touched briefly early on Living in Place Institute's CLIP certification. CLIP is an acronym for Certified Living in Place Professional. Here's my question. What is the benefit of being CLIP certified and working on a team that understands the Living in Place Institute's vision? Chris, why don't you kick it off?
So for us, it's it's understanding the trends in the space and understanding the medical and cognitive issues that might arise when designing the technology. Also, as important as understanding the terminology and to know to know the terminology and what are the available solutions that are currently there and what can we do to enhance them or to bring that extra layer of understanding that maybe there's 2 or 3 parts that we can provide the unification on. So maybe there's practices or equipment that we can bring together to make it more seamless and easier to use for everyone.
All right, Monique, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think that the CLIP training is definitely one of the advanced certification study areas for my field. So if you see someone who has a CLIP certification, you know that this is an occupational therapist who has gone beyond their basic training and then that generalist knowledge I mentioned earlier. But for me, I found that, because in my terminology, there's a lot more effective interventions that were truly client-centered than some other solutions that we could come up with otherwise. And it also helps people in my field be able to speak and understand the design language better, so we're more effective communicators.
Right. And Jonas, do you have anything to add?
Well, for me, it's been great as a professional designer. One, I think if I mention to someone that I'm CLIP it certified, they recognize the sort of the study and the need and the importance of that all of a sudden, and it gives a credibility factor. I think for me, it also goes back to just my goals as a designer in terms of universal design and making things safe for all people, and just easy flow and that type of thing. And then I think the other point is, I think it also helps us, from a marketing perspective, that you have that certification, and it's worked very well.
Good. Well, this has been a great discussion. Now we'll move into the Q&A portion of the session. Hi, everybody. We have a few questions here. We're going to start with a question for Chris. Chris, any particular line or lines of integratable sensor products that you're using that cover a broad range of applications, such as occupancy, motion sensing, activity, logging, et cetera, et cetera?
So really, it's going to be, the native sensors that are manufactured by the higher level automation system. So typically, if you're using these sensors and you want them to, affect some change, they're going to have an automation system of some kind or a security system of some kind that they communicate with. So the manufacturers will have, a large line of the different sensors. And then the other thing is third-party sensors, depending on how they communicate, you can integrate them. So it may be close contact or GPIO or the language that they use to communicate their status or whatever it is that you're looking for them to do. You can take that and put it into your higher level automation system. So really it's a matter of what are you trying to sense or what are you trying to do, and then finding whether the manufacturer has their own native version, or if you find a third party and either there's a driver out there or you write a driver. So, yeah.
So any product brands,
so
vendors that people could research?
So Lutron is great for lighting control. They're absolutely fantastic. They, they have occupancy sensors. Crestron is, of course, there is no real limit to what can be done with a Crestron system. So those two are going to be the stalwarts in the space. And then security systems have motion sensors that you can integrate in, or if you can even have a panel, a security panel that you don't use for security necessarily. You simply use it as a translator for the sensors that manufacturer uses natively, and you can integrate that into your Crestron or into your Lutron.
Okay, great. So a question for Jonas. Is there a prominent starting point in the living in place market? For example, people get started with lighting because that's what the public are aware of, that they need advanced lighting in their homes. What usually starts the conversation leading into the living in place from a design perspective? What do you hear?
I do hear a lot of people thinking about the future and what's going to happen in the future to them and to their family, and thinking about making the house sort of usable for a longer period of time. And that goes to, should I go ahead and do wider doorways now? And do I really need to? No, but I want to make this a better house. I'm seeing that a lot with the younger generation, where they want to do a forever home, which is a really cool concept, as opposed to something that is just, oh, this is exactly what we need right now for our budget.
All right, so follow up on that. You're in the design phase, you're also bringing in the architect and the builder or the GC into those conversations about how do we design these architecturally?
Well, for myself, we have a company that acts as both of those. So we're sort of logging those types of needs in the beginning when we go through our schematic planning and wondering, what is the purpose of the project? Is it a kitchen? Is it a bathroom? Is it a whole house renovation? And in that project, what are the aspects of it that would be easy to adapt for sort of living in place? And some of that is, staircases, or is there an elevator, or is there barrier-free shower, grab bars? And I think one typical example is a lot of people will say, I don't need a grab bar, but you could also look at them like safety belts. You never know when you need one.
Right, right. Let's go back to Chris. Another question. Can you speak a little about the specific challenges that an integrator will run into, even more so with living in place clients and the additional hand-holding support that tends to be necessary?
So sure, and it goes back to, again, paying attention at inception, being involved at inception, and having those conversations, and knowing that there's a team of people that are working with you. So you can iron out of a lot of the sort of unknown or difficulty by working with the designer, by working with the occupational therapist, by when you are qualifying the client, or you're surveying the client initially with their needs. You can take all of their input, as well as, what you can infer from the rest of the team and from just things that you see. And you can get ahead of a lot of the things that are going to provide, a little bit more difficulty down the road. Also, adoption is a big thing, understanding technology adoption, and knowing that just because something can be fantastic doesn't necessarily mean that the adoption curve is going to meet where that client is. So designing around, understanding adoption prior to designing it, because, something as simple as a wearable may not be in play. You may not get that person to put that on, regularly. So you can't use it as a staple of your, of the technology and how you're accommodating that client. So those are the, knowing adoption and paying attention to those things. And then, of course, sometimes you are going to have somebody that contacts you more frequently. Hey, this doesn't work, or it's not, I don't understand it. And you have to provide multiple tutorials. That's all part of what we do. I mean, we're there to best serve the client. And so, if that's what we need to do, it's what we do. So.
Right. And that's where voice control is going to be playing a bigger role, do you think, down the road?
Certainly, that's a big one, because the spoken phrase is very easy. The sensor-based stuff, of course, where it does it without any interaction is that's a big thing. But it's all about the least number of actions to the greatest effect. So if you can speak a phrase and have multiple systems perform actions to make it so that the house is comfortable and safe and it's what you want it to do, then that's going to be the easiest one of them. Some of it is still, you have to say the exact phrase. So there's, again, adoption there can be a little sticky, because, it's colloquial, they'll say something colloquially and it just won't understand. And you're just like, no, you have to say it exactly like this. So it's getting better for sure, but it's still somewhat nascent in its ability to kind of interpret human behavior. But yeah, like voice assistants are going to be the future for sure.
Perfect. Question for Monique. Monique, can you give us an example of a positive experience with an integrator or designer? The questioner says, I'll quote, "We'd like to learn from positive experiences."
Actually, I just had a really positive experience with interior architecture recently. We were looking at living environments for veterans, and it was the pre-design phase. And a professor and I, and then actually our students also, because why not have a huge learning experience for everyone involved? And the really positive part of it so far has been the fact that we all are approaching the problem from the same perspective. We all were on the same page, coming in very open communication, establishing who we were working for, and establishing goals together. And the solutions that we're coming up with that hopefully are going to be put into place soon, it meets what I recognize to be the needs of the veterans on their daily life. It also meets what the interior architecture professionals believe also need to happen from their perspective. And then the way it's worked together, like when I look at these designs and the plans and what we're going to go forward with, it really is creating an environment that is really supportive, that provides activities and spaces and for the right kind of programming that I would like to see, but in ways that honestly, I never would have come up with these solutions. And so I think what's going to end up happening is some very, very positive functional results that are going to make an impact in people's lives. I've got all sorts of different examples like that in my past of where when we really come together and look and agree on what we were working on and bringing together our perspectives from the person and what's even possible in the environment, which is not something I always necessarily know as the health professional. the solutions are just so much tighter. They're so much more functional. And when people look at them, you see a lot of people going, well, that's actually really smart. I think we get that reaction a lot when we work together.
Super. Jonas, here's a real good question. Would you say the large portion of your living in place clientele are higher net worth clients who can afford a full design build process and strong automation integration?
Probably, for me, it varies between medium income and higher income. And I have gotten involved in a couple projects where we've done lower income. But I think that if you look at it holistically, you can look at it from a perspective of what's the low hanging fruit, what is affordable in terms of easy things that the first time you build it, the first time you do it, is not going to cost any more. It's just retrofitting it later is going to cost more. So I really encourage people to think about when you're spending the money doing it at whatever level, that you're doing it with this eye towards the future, so that you're doing things that don't need to be redone, which I think is both, cost efficient, obviously sustainable, but just smart.
Super. Let me stay with you, Jonas. What manufacturers do you use for grab or balance assist bars?
I have used, I've used a lot of different ones. There's Ponte Giulio does a lot of really cool work. Quaco out of Germany has all kinds of accessories, including grab bars. Then I've used Ginger, Kohler, a bunch of different ones over time. And a lot of it has to do with the look and style of the space, and then also whether it's meant for a certain purpose, like getting in and out of a tub, or if it's just a balance piece in a shower, something like that, or maybe around a toilet. But doing it some architecturally and in a way that when you look at the graphics, say, I always think of taking a picture of it, does it look beautiful, sort of in my mind, and choosing a grab bar that way has always been, it's usually the way I approach it.
Good. Back to Monique. Monique, what smart technology scenarios do you like for older individuals, and your thoughts in general on smart technology for individuals who exhibit cognitive challenges?
I would say the vast majority of the smart technology solutions that I have found to be effective with my older adults have been really intuitive and also really seamless. It seems like if it's something that they have to monitor or know how to use a certain way, depending on the person, it may or may not happen. And I haven't had a lot of older adults actually adopt the technologies that have a bigger learning curve when I've presented them all their different options. So they tend to prefer the ones that they can just have in place and almost don't even think about it, like the sensor systems and even systems, depending on who it is, of course, that their loved ones, their children or their caregivers can actually monitor for them. So I've had people be like, okay, I'm okay with that because I don't have to take care of it. It's just going to do its thing, keep me safe, and someone else is going to deal with it. Like my daughter's going to be checking in on me on her phone. And they also being very aware that that's happening. So it's not a surprise that someone can check in on them that way. And so I think those are the situations that seem to be going over the best. Things, wearables, I feel like are hit or miss. It depends on the person. Honestly, it depends on how open they are to a fall alert button in the first place, if they're willing to look at some of the other items. So usually the more hands-off things, they tend to be more accepting of right now, at least the current group I have. I don't want to generalize because everyone's so different. In terms of smart technology for people who have cognitive impairments, that gets tricky because cognition is an extremely complex function that we have. And so when I approach it, I first will be doing a lot of different kinds of assessments just to figure out what the cognitive impairment is. So if it's memory versus judgment or safety and judgment, like these are completely different situations. But I do believe that smart technology, the right piece with the right understanding of what it does and also fitting kind of their own perception of what they like in technology, it can be really great for keeping them safe. But it really has to match them right. It's not a one size fit all by any stretch of the imagination.
Okay, perfect. So I want to thank our panelists, Monique and Jonas and Chris, for your valuable input today. I want to thank everybody in the audience who came and visited with us, and everybody have a great rest of your virtual CEDIA. We'll talk to you later.